Divorce mediation can work so well for a high net worth family. Every family, whether you have a lot or a little, has a certain pie. And I always tell my clients, why would you give me any larger piece of that pie than you have to? So whether you have a lot of money or a little bit of money, it makes sense to preserve that money for your family. I'll actually say to people, you can either send your kids to college or you can help contribute to sending my kids to college. One great benefit to an alternative dispute resolution divorce is that you are keeping it completely confidential and within the walls of my office. You do not have to go to court, which is an open forum. And when you are in court in New York State, there are very often many other people in that room while your case is on the record. And so if you want to keep things at the maximum level of privacy, this is a great way to do it. And mediation is actually the best way to ensure that there is fairness in the provisions of your settlement agreement when you're getting divorced. There is no bias in a mediation process. When I'm acting as a mediator, I have to maintain my neutrality, and I take that very seriously. Just because someone has a large amount of wealth doesn't mean that they should just have to pay for everything. And one of the great things about mediation is that we can work to make an agreement that makes sense for your particular situation. To ensure fairness, the mediation process allows you time to think about your options, to consider different options, and perhaps even to test those options out and provide for modifications later on. And that's what's so great about it. Instead of having a judge dictate to you how things will be, and then having to go through a very formal, very expensive, time-consuming process, if that doesn't feel right to you, to seek an appeal. The wonderful thing about mediation is that you have the control to speak up if something doesn't feel right to you, if something doesn't seem the best way to be doing things, and to raise other options and have them be considered and thought through. So when I start with a couple in mediation, the first step is that my office will send them the homework. And they will have a fair amount of homework to do before we get started. But what I do is I send both a copy of the statement of net worth, which is the formal financial disclosure that you would have to complete and file with the court if you were in court. I send that to my clients. And I say that they can fill that out. They can exchange statements of net worth if they want to, just as if we were in court. And then I also send them a pared down, simplified version of my information sheets. And they are free to just complete that if they want. In addition to that, I also ask for a list of documents for them to put together and provide to me, and also, of course, to their spouse. There's a voluntary free exchange of information in a mediation process. In addition to that, I give my clients a blank copy of the memo of understanding, which is what we will fill out together and build all of the detail and all of the provisions of their agreement. But when we start, they get a blank copy of that. And I tell them, you could treat this as a wish list where you can put down, if this all worked out in the best way possible, what would that look like to you? And you can each submit your own. If you're in a position to sit down together around the kitchen table and try to fill that out together, then I encourage that. And send them in to me so that before we get started, I'm able to see where we'll have points of agreement and where we may have a tougher time in reaching an agreement. So you submit all of that homework to me together, and I review it before we get started, and I start building your memo of understanding. And as we go, if there are other documents that I realize are relevant, then I will make the request for that. If as we go along, we realize that there's a need to bring in some sort of a financial expert to value property, to do some sort of an assessment for us, then I will recommend that. But that will be something that we would discuss together and that you would be fully aware of before we engaged any other type of a financial expert to help us. It's very important to choose the right mediator. And I encourage people when they are consulting with me to do consultations with lots of other mediators. And I do just point out to them that I am an attorney, so I am capable of doing the entire job for them from start to finish. I am qualified to draft documents and to have my office file those documents so that we can handle the entire job from start to finish. That said, there are many non-attorney mediators out there, and some of them are fantastic. So it's not to say that you shouldn't hire someone who is a non-attorney mediator, but whomever you hire, whether they're an attorney or not, you want to do your homework, you want to make sure they're experienced, and that you feel comfortable with them. One benefit of having an attorney mediator is that they're very well versed in the law, and although I'm no longer litigating, I did do that in my career for many, many years. And my partners and the other attorneys at my firm are all in court every day. And I have the benefit of picking their brains, of meeting with them if there's a particular issue on a case that I want to flesh out. And so I can give my clients some context, some idea of what may happen in court so that they can be guided accordingly with that information. Mediation is a great option for high net worth couples. Just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that you should waste it all on a litigation. And mediation gives you a great method of being able to do this in a more cost-effective way that also gives you a perfectly designed agreement that makes sense for your family and that can be very, very thorough and specific to your situation. So it works quite well in a high net worth situation.